Kobe Bryant couldn't fill, or Michael Jordan fill LeBron's shoes. The impact that he's had with different teammates, different organizations.
Would you be mad at me if I just walked up?
Then there's Shaquille O'Neal, live, unscripted, and unfiltered. On national television, he didn't hold back, laying bare what he sees as hypocrisy and shifting values in modern basketball. By calling out LeBron James, Shaq transformed locker room whispers into a public reckoning and forced everyone to ask, what's the price of fame when the game's soul gets questioned? Locker room lines crossed. When Shaquille O'Neal speaks about behind-the-scenes dynamics, people tend to listen, not because he embellishes, but because he lived through eras of shifting power, from the dominance of the early 2000s Lakers to the evolving star-driven league that followed. So when Shaq hints that LeBron James occasionally crossed lines of influence or authority inside locker rooms, the claim carries weight beyond simple disagreement. His framing often focuses less on personal criticism and more on structural change, a shift in how modern stars assert themselves and how that may disrupt the balance teams once relied on.
And everyone's wondering who, in your prime, do you think you could beat LeBron and AD, you and Kobe?
Do I think or do I know?
Shaq's recollections typically involve subtle observations rather than explosive accusations. Instances where LeBron's voice carried more weight than the coaching staff's. Moments when teammates deferred to him not because of hierarchy, but because of the implicit understanding of his standing in the league. Shaq portrays these as symptoms of a broader issue, a league moving from collaborative leadership to individualized command. In his view, the locker room used to be a place where roles were defined by collective norms. Now, it is shaped by the gravitational pull of superstar power. What makes Shaq's commentary especially compelling is that he lived through something similar with Kobe Bryant, a young star whose influence grew rapidly. But unlike the friction between Shaq and Kobe, Shaq's comments on LeBron aren't about personal rivalry, they're about altering team culture. He often suggests that when influence becomes too centralized, it affects authenticity, the natural order of communication, trust, responsibility, and accountability. In Shaq's telling, LeBron's leadership is undeniably effective, but it comes with consequences. And the stories he shares act less as scandal and more as a quiet warning that star-driven control, if unchecked, can reshape the dynamics of a team far more than fans see from the outside. The power behind the curtain. A recurring theme in Shaquille O'Neal's commentary revolves around the influence LeBron wields over roster decisions, not as rumor, but as a natural byproduct of his status. Shaq never outright labels it manipulation. Instead, he frames it as a structural shift in the NBA, the age of the empowered superstar. Yet, in his investigative tone, he questions whether that power has grown too large. According to Shaq, when a player's preferences shape organizational decisions, trades, coaching hires, rotations, the lines blur between front office authority and locker room hierarchy.
Shaq knows damn well he's supposed to be in the conversation as one of the 2 or 3 greatest players ever. Not just most dominant, the greatest ever. You're never gonna see a man Shaquille O'Neal's size be able to move with the athleticism that he possessed.
This speculation reflects long-running whispers throughout the league that certain players enjoy privileges once reserved exclusively for executives. Shaq's concerns echo those of past legends who came from eras where players had far less agency. His point isn't that LeBron is malicious, rather that the ecosystem around him may encourage overreach. He often describes scenarios where teammates might feel uncertain about their roles, not because of their performance, but because of their compatibility with LeBron's preferred style or relationships. Shaq also highlights the ripple effect, how this level of influence shapes recruitment, chemistry, and long-term planning. In his analysis, when roster building becomes tailored to the preferences of one individual, it risks short-term optimization at the expense of continuity. Shaq notes that teams built slowly through development tend to form deeper bonds, something hard to replicate when lineups shift based on a star's shifting priorities. The underlying question Shaq raises is structural rather than personal. Is the modern NBA too dependent on its stars? And if so, what happens when influence eclipses collaboration? His critique, though measured, points to a league navigating a delicate balance between empowering its stars and preserving the integrity of team building. Leadership under the lens. When Shaq dissects leadership, he draws from first-hand experience with 2 of the most demanding personalities in basketball history, Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. So when he scrutinizes LeBron's leadership style, it's less about tearing him down and more about mapping differences across generations. His comparisons are rarely framed as absolutes. Instead, he analyzes distinctions in approach, pressure, and philosophy, the quiet details that define how each star commanded their teams.
And it seems like one former Laker, Shaquille O'Neal, believes that the person that may end up suffering the most when LeBron returns is going to be Austin Reeves. And he recently said that on his big Shaq, big podcast that he recently did with, I think Anthony Anderson was on there. On there.
In Shaq's view, Kobe and MJ were confrontational leaders, confront challenges head on, call out teammates, demand intensity. LeBron, by contrast, often leads through orchestration, shaping systems, influencing personnel choices, and controlling pace on and off the court. Shaq doesn't argue one method is superior. He examines how these differences affect accountability. He suggests LeBron's more strategic style can sometimes create distance. Teammates may hesitate to challenge him, fearing not just the hierarchy, but the broader influence he holds. Shaq also points to context. Kobe and MJ spent most of their careers anchored to one franchise, navigating long-term relationships with staff, coaches, and teammates. LeBron's mobility introduced a different brand of leadership, adaptive, transitional, designed to rebuild on arrival rather than evolve over years. Shaq investigates whether this adaptability comes at a cost, a loss of continuity, fewer opportunities for friction to form into deeper bonds, and less familiarity with the specific pain of rebuilding. What makes Shaq's commentary resonate is its nuance. He doesn't dismiss LeBron's leadership, he acknowledges its effectiveness, but he asks whether its structure changes what leadership means in the modern NBA. Is the role of a leader tied to loyalty and long-term investment, or has it evolved into something more strategic, calculated, and flexible? Legends in tension. While overt conflict between LeBron James and older NBA legends is rare, Shaq often draws attention to the underlying tension, the quiet divides shaped by era, expectation, and philosophy. He rarely describes it as hostility. Instead, he frames it as a generational disconnect. Older players, including Shaq's contemporaries, came from a league defined by physicality, limited player movement, and hierarchical structures. For them, LeBron represents a new era: player autonomy, super team construction, strategic relocation, and unprecedented public influence.
I always wanted to play inside, but now when I see these big guys step out, I get kind of jealous. I'm like, I wish I can do that. If I had your jump shot.
Shaq's analysis suggests that this tension stems from differing definitions of authenticity. Many legends see the grind, staying with a team, pushing through losing seasons, building chemistry slowly, as part of the sport's identity. LeBron, however, redefines success by optimizing conditions around him, choosing destinations, organizing talent, and leveraging his influence. Shaq doesn't villainize this shift. He investigates its impact, noting that it can feel jarring to players who built their careers on endurance rather than orchestration. Shaq also highlights how media narratives amplify this divide. LeBron is framed as a once-in-a-generation figure, statistically incomparable and historically ubiquitous. That level of spotlight inevitably generates friction with past icons whose achievements came under different circumstances. Shaq often positions himself as an intermediary, someone who respects LeBron's greatness but understands why other legends question aspects of his approach. The tension in Shaq's breakdown isn't personal. It's philosophical. It reflects a league grappling with its evolution, from institution-driven models to player-defined eras. And when Shaq exposes these dynamics on live TV, it resonates not because it's controversial, but because it illuminates a conversation the NBA has been circling around for years, shaping the storyline. One of Shaquille O'Neal's more understated critiques centers on how LeBron James shapes the narrative ecosystem surrounding his career. Shaq doesn't frame this as manipulation. Rather, he analyzes how modern media dynamics naturally elevate certain players, giving them influence far beyond the court. In his assessments, LeBron isn't just an athlete, he's a brand, a content engine, and a central figure around whom sports coverage gravitates. That gravitational pull, Shaq suggests, can distort objectivity.
My Mount Rushmore is Kobe, Shaq, Bron, and Steph. I love you, big fella.
I appreciate that. That's. But apparently, to some idiots, I didn't work hard. But I appreciate that.
Come on.
And did you hear my AI diss record?
Shaq often describes a media environment that responds to LeBron's presence with immediate amplification. Small gestures become statements, routine performances become legacy debates, and criticisms are filtered through the lens of LeBron's stature. For Shaq, this isn't the fault of LeBron himself, but of the modern structure of sports media, where narratives are currency, and few athletes generate more profitable narratives than LeBron. This imbalance, Shaq argues, can create an uneven marketplace of ideas. When one player dominates the spotlight, other stories, including shortcomings, team dynamics, or coaching decisions, can be reframed or obscured. Shaq examines how this impacts accountability. He notes that past superstars, including those of his own era, didn't operate with this level of narrative insulation. Their mistakes were scrutinized more openly because the media machine didn't revolve around single personalities. Shaq's deeper concern is how this influence reshapes perceptions of greatness. If narratives are constantly tailored around one figure, the criteria by which we judge performance may gradually shift. Through his commentary, Shaq raises a subtle but significant question. In an era where storytelling often eclipses analysis, how much of LeBron's legacy is shaped by performance, and how much by the machinery that amplifies it? The GOAT standard. When Shaquille O'Neal discusses the GOAT debate, he approaches it with an analytical detachment shaped by decades inside the league. Unlike commentators who rely on emotion or bias, Shaq tends to break greatness down into components: dominance, longevity, adaptability, adversity, and the context of one's era. So when he evaluates LeBron's standing, he focuses not on undermining his achievements, but on examining the criteria themselves and whether the modern landscape naturally advantages LeBron's case.
When LeBron passes up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in points, and he will this year, will that make him the greatest player ever? Okay. An interesting question. I think the greatest player is Michael Jordan.
Shaq acknowledges that LeBron's statistical resume is unprecedented, but he also investigates how modern conditions, medical advancements, rule changes, sports science, and team-building flexibility affect those numbers. In his view, greatness cannot be judged solely by accumulation. It must also consider the environment in which achievements occur. He often contrasts LeBron's freedom of movement with the constraints placed on past greats, suggesting that different eras produce different pathways to success. Another component Shaq highlights is adversity. He notes that players like Jordan, Hakeem, and even Kobe endured long stretches of development and rebuilding before reaching championship peaks. LeBron, by choosing destinations strategically, navigated around certain forms of adversity while taking on new ones, such as heightened expectations and pressure. Shaq doesn't frame this as right or wrong. He treats it as a variable that complicates GOAT comparisons. To Shaq, the debate ultimately centers on standards. Should greatness be defined by output alone, by longevity, by championships, or by the journey navigated to achieve those accomplishments? Shaq's breakdown isn't about declaring a winner. It's about reminding audiences that metrics cannot be recycled across generations without understanding their context. By exposing these nuances, he contributes to a more grounded, less sensationalized version of the GOAT discussion. What's left to earn? When Shaq outlines what LeBron must still accomplish to secure universal, undisputed respect among players past and present, he does so from the perspective of someone who has experienced every layer of NBA hierarchy: the locker room, the media glare, the executive office, and the court. His tone is observational, not confrontational. He identifies gaps not in LeBron's resume, but in the narrative cohesion of his career.
If you're LeBron, where would you go? If he was going to leave? No, come on, Shaq. Give me a real answer. Miami, come on.
I'll go Golden State.
Why? Why? No. Let me answer why, Max. Let me answer why. Why?
You're on the
Because I know you're joking, because you can't be serious.
I'm not joking.
Shaq often points to the concept of a signature run. Many legends are defined by one defining stretch: Jordan's first three-peat, Hakeem's back-to-back titles without another superstar, Kobe's post-Shaq championship arc. For Shaq, LeBron has titles but not a universally agreed-upon era, where he stood alone as the clear, unquestioned force without equally elite partners. This isn't a dismissal, but a structural critique, that modern super team construction makes singular ownership of a championship run harder to identify. Another point Shaq raises is continuity. He observes that many all-time legends became synonymous with one franchise, building identity through longevity and shared struggle. LeBron's mobility, while strategic and successful, complicates that narrative. Shaq analyzes how this affects perception. Fans and former players often look for stories that span eras within one city, one system, one fan base, threads that stitch a career together. LeBron's career, though accomplished, is more segmented. Shaq also highlights the intangible aspects: leadership through decline, mentoring younger cores, or elevating flawed teams beyond expectations. These, he argues, are the final chapters that shape how legends are remembered. His point isn't that LeBron lacks greatness. Shaq repeatedly acknowledges he's already among the elite. What he questions is the completeness of the story. For Shaq, greatness isn't only about what has been achieved, but what remains unresolved. And those unresolved elements, he believes, still invite scrutiny. Shaq's blunt spotlight on LeBron in today's basketball culture may have cracked open more than a few egos. The fallout, the whispers, the reactions, the shifting loyalties is only getting started. If you want every take, every behind-the-scenes reaction, and the raw truth that the commentators don't want you to hear. Subscribe and stay tuned. The next reveal could change everything.